Hello, welcome to this Collaborative Dynamics mini-lecture on the tasks of management. I'm going to talk about a couple of different things. First, what is it exactly that managers within organizations do, and then how do those managers go about doing it? Commonly, we think of managers as individuals who manage people or human resources, which is true. Most managers are responsible for managing human resources, which are commonly the people that report directly to them. In other cases, such as project managers, you may also have individuals that don't report directly to you, but you're responsible for some aspect of the work that they produce. And normally within organizations, particularly high-performing organizations, those human resources are very diverse in nature, both in terms of skill sets and backgrounds, but also in terms of ethnic diversity, cultural diversity, educational diversity. And in addition to those human resources, managers actually have many other things that they're responsible for managing. In addition to those human resources, managers are also responsible for managing financial resources. They may be responsible for managing some type of real estate, such as an office building or office space, a plant, some other types of facilities that they're responsible for managing as well. A manager may also be responsible for information technology or data management or some types of information technology resources in addition to those people. This might take the form of a transaction system or some other type of information technology system that the organization uses and that manager's team is responsible for utilizing in order to do their everyday work. And then managers might also be responsible for equipment or other types of physical resources. If you're a manager within a manufacturing environment, this might take the form of a forklift. However, if you're in an office, that equipment may take the form of photocopiers and printers and office furniture and things along those lines, those physical pieces of equipment that are needed in order for the organization and the people within that organization to do their jobs effectively. So managers are responsible for not just, but also many other resources as well. And really the simplest definition of management is that the manager's responsibility is to take all of those resources that they're responsible for and turn those into performance for the organization. And this could be in the form of sales, it could be in the form of productivity or any other metric that the organization needs to follow in order to achieve their organizational goals. As an effective manager, this is really quite the balancing act, because in order for managers to do that, in order for them to turn those resources into performance, they have to balance two different things. Effective managers have to be able to balance efficiency as well as effectiveness when it comes to how to deploy those resources. And this is a balancing act because many times, in order to increase one, you're doing that at the detriment of the other. So in this example, if we look at forms of efficiency, and this could be cost, in most organizations, the largest cost that the organization has is labor costs, and also productivity. So how many of something is being produced every hour, every day, or whatever that measurement is. Those are examples of efficiencies. On the effectiveness side, an organization is effective perhaps when it achieves a certain quality rating, so being able to produce a high quality product. Effectiveness may also be measured by customer satisfaction, how well our customers perceive their experience with us and the products and services that we produce. Additionally, the skills that our employees have is also a form of effectiveness. So this is a balancing act in that in order to increase one, a lot of times you may have to compromise another. For instance, if as an organization we need to reduce our costs and we choose to reduce our labor costs, in order to do that, we may have to lay some employees off. We may choose to offshore some of our work to another country or using a vendor as opposed to doing that work internally. And by doing that, there's a trade-off that occurs, and this may be in the form of decreased quality, decreased customer satisfaction. If we choose to hire lower skilled workers or try to reduce the amount that we pay employees, we may be sacrificing the skill set of those employees, so the quality of the workers that we have. So hiring cheaper labor may in turn mean having lower skilled workers, so not being able to do some of that work as effectively. The same is true on the productivity side. If I am requiring my employees to produce 8 widgets per hour and I want to increase that to 10 widgets per hour, then there's a trade-off that occurs likely on the quality side. I can produce more of something faster, but I may not be able to do that and achieve the same level of quality. Now, this isn't always the case. When we reconcile this, we may also put in place some sort of efficiencies that reduce waste in a process or whatnot to make that process more efficient. However, a lot of times we have to weigh this trade-off. Is decreasing our labor costs and potentially laying off employees, is that going to have a negative impact on customer satisfaction? If I'm a call center and I decide to offshore my call center, say, to India, what is that going to do to customer satisfaction if the individuals answering the phone maybe have a different culture, have a different accent? What is that going to do to the customer experience and ultimately customer satisfaction? So these are all things that managers have to balance in order to achieve that performance. They need to balance the efficiency as well as the effectiveness of those resources. There's really 4 things that managers are responsible for. Managers are responsible for planning, organizing, leading, and controlling their human as well as their other resources in order to achieve their organizational goals both efficiently and effectively. Managers have to plan what the goals are for the organization, what the management by objectives are going to be, the key performance indicators, whatever that goal is has to be set. And then they have to organize all of those resources and figure out how those resources are going to come together in order to meet that goal. Then they have to lead their organization, lead their people through that process and in executing those plans. And then finally, they have to put in some type of control measure in place in order to make sure that goals are being met. If goals aren't being met, making sure that there's some form of remediation that's going on, and being able to really control and measure that process on a continuing basis. So really, this is very much a cyclical type of event that goes on where organizations go through planning, then organizing, then leading and controlling, then back up to planning. So it's really not an end-to-end process. It's a continuous process. Organizations and managers are continuing to plan as they go through and they're leading their organizations and putting those controls into place. They're getting feedback on how well their organization is performing, which is going to impact their future plans. Do you need to change the plan for next week? What is next year going to look like? A lot of that is really determined based upon those controls that are put into place and how well your organization is performing. Organizations perform those 4 functions. However, depending upon their role in the organization, they may perform those in different levels. So, for instance, we can think that the top managers within the organization, so the CEO, the COO, so on and so forth, really don't do the same job. While they're all considered managers, they don't necessarily do the same job as those at lower levels of the organization. So those middle managers, which are typically managers that manage other managers, they do a different job than, say, a first-line manager. So those would be individuals that are managing individual contributors. So while all managers are responsible for planning, organizing, leading, and controlling within their organizations, they all do it in a different way depending upon their level in the organization. So, for instance, let's take planning. Top-level managers within an organization spend much more time planning than do those first-line managers. And this makes sense. The CEO or the C-suite within the organization are really responsible for determining what the future of that organization is going to look like, crafting the vision for the future for that organization, whereas the first-line managers within the organization are really more responsible for executing that vision and monitoring and controlling the individuals that report to them. From an organizing standpoint, generally everyone spends about the same amount of time organizing within the organization. Leading, on the other hand, our first-line managers really spend the majority of their time leading. And this makes sense because first-line managers are managing individual contributors who are really doing the work. They're sort of where the rubber meets the road and where that vision actually gets accomplished. They're leading the individuals who are doing that work, who are producing the products, who are talking to customers, and really doing the actual feet on the street work for the organization. And then, from a controlling standpoint, our top-level managers spend the most time of all managers controlling. So looking at how we're doing, making adjustments, getting the feedback, trying to figure out how that's going to change the plan for the future. Whereas our first-line managers are a little bit more responsible for leading those individuals, but not as much for controlling. Some of the controls may be more immediate control, so how do we change our plan throughout the course of the day? But you can see here that our top-level managers are really responsible and really focused for the planning within the organization, high-level organization, leading those that report to them in the organization as a whole, and then controlling the different metrics, controlling within the organization to make sure that we're meeting measurements, that we're getting feedback, and that we're changing course and doing what we need to do in order to be successful. Middle managers are supporting those top-level managers and those first-line managers in achieving their goals. But our first-level managers, we can see, are really the ones who are focused on leading the individuals within the organization and then supporting those higher levels and making sure that they're providing feedback and information at those higher levels within the organization. Now, so from this we know that managers are responsible for managing resources, which includes not just human resources, but other types of resources as well, which can include financial, information technology, real estate, equipment, so on and so forth, any type of resource that's required in order for the organization to achieve its goal. And really what the manager is responsible for doing is taking all of those resources and turning those into performance for the organization. And in order to do that, and to do that effectively, the manager has to balance the use of those resources against the efficiency as well as the effectiveness of those resources in order to get the balance that we need to be successful. And managers do all of this through 4 tasks. Managers are responsible for planning, organizing, leading, and controlling those resources. But depending upon your role within the organization and what level you are within the organization, the amount of time that you spend in each one of these 4 tasks is going to be different in order to make sure that you're able to do what you need to do for your specific role within the organization. I hope this helped, this mini lecture, giving you a little bit more of a view and explanation into what the tasks of management include. I want to thank you for taking the time with me to review this, and please make sure to stay in touch with me online at collaborativedynamics.org. You can also find me, Micah Schramm, on LinkedIn, as well as shoot me an email at mpschramm@gmail.com. Thanks everyone for joining this Collaborative Dynamics mini lecture, where together we're getting things done.